Hi, I'm Jack Brewer with Expanding Frontiers Research. In this video, we'll be exploring how citing a previously submitted FOIA request led to obtaining intriguing information on members of the UFO community. We'll also be looking at how a request that initially just turned up a couple of responsive pages turned to opening the floodgates on a request for information responsive to Ramtha's School of Enlightenment. We cited previous requests in order to submit new requests, and we'll be looking at specifically how that was done and what resulted. This is part of the Expanding Frontiers Research FOIA Instruction collection. Please consider joining our valued financial supporters at the EFR Patreon. There we post records that we obtain through public records requests as we receive them. We discuss these records with our growing community, as well as provide our supporters with help with their FOIA requests and their research. We provide a significant amount of content on our blog at expandingfrontiersresearch.org, as well as video material where our executive director, Erica Lukes, and I conduct discussions with a variety of fascinating authors, various subject matter experts, writers and researchers, journalists, science advocates. We've even spoken with a cybersecurity expert and a watchdog of the weapons research and development community. We explore quite a bit of content of social issues and circumstances that are of importance to the public at large. We hope you'll choose to join us at our Patreon page. Now, let's further consider the Freedom of Information Act. As the year 2017 came to a close, the New York Times and other media outlets resuscitated the UFO narrative, and along with it, the accompanying conspiracy theories. The Defense Intelligence Agency had been identified as behind what had come to be known as the Pentagon UFO program. There were way too many dubious plot lines to try to cover in this space, but suffice it to say that the DIA was slow in answering FOIA requests, and the people that were promoting this story were not the most respectful of verifying their claims. Researchers identified this supposed UFO program as the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program. This was known as the AAWSAP, and some contract numbers had been identified. Now, one of the other things that was happening was the people that were not the most reliable narrators were discouraging researchers from submitting FOIA requests. They would try to tell us that it was going to be hidden and that the powers that be would never admit to what had been going on. They'd also say that if records and requests are about subcontractors, then you won't be able to locate them. In many instances, that's simply not correct. A researcher named Keith Basterfield, who was working with one of the contract numbers that had been identified as associated with the OSAP, noticed in a 2010 DIA FOIA log that someone all the way back in 2010 had done a FOIA request on that specific contract number. At that point, I simply did a FOIA request for whatever the DIA had given in response to that FOIA request in 2010. The request in question was to a researcher named Quincy Wilkins. I do not think that he was particularly interested in UFOs or UAP or whatever name we want to assign it in 2010. I think that he was more on the intelligence community beat and was just keeping an eye on their contracts. I submitted a request for whatever was given in response to Quincy Wilkinson's request because I thought that that would get answered long before all of the requests to the DIA that so many researchers, including myself, were waiting for. And I also thought that it would kind of be a shortcut and wouldn't require a lot of processing. What I found out in short order was that the DIA had denied the contract to Quincy Wilkins during that request, but they did provide me with correspondence with BASS, which was Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies. The correspondence from the DIA to BASS back in the 2010-2011 timeframe was to inform BASS that someone had made a FOIA request about their project award. It was advising Bigelow to let DIA know whether they wanted their project information withheld or not, and to give them reasons as to why that would be. Ultimately, DIA did withhold the information from the requester, so apparently BASS answered those questions to DIA's satisfaction. But when they supplied this information to me, this letter, it at least let us know that Bigelow and BASS had indeed been the recipients of a project award under the OSAP. So not only did it give us that information, but it also shot holes in all of the naysayers that were suggesting that the FOIA would be a waste of time to pursue this information. And eventually, the DIA did give us quite a bit of information, even if some of the main things have still not come to light, and a lot of the more sensational claims, including whether the DIA ever was fully informed that BASS thought it was working on UFOs or not, is still not completely clear. Another instance of successfully leapfrogging off of a former FOIA request happened when I got the NSA, the National Security Agency, to conduct a mandatory declassification review on what I had identified as a 1978 NSA memo written by an assignee who was attending a UFO conference. This was quite interesting to me, and I had identified this through the former FOIA work of a group called Citizens Against UFO Secrecy, or CAUSE. In the 1980s, they sued the NSA for their UFO files. One of the records withheld was this memo because the NSA reasoned that it does not apply to an actual flying object, which the NSA interpreted to be the substance of the request submitted by CAUSE. And so it did not include this memo in the release. Ironically, that's the kind of thing I would be more interested in than its reports on flying objects. So some research showed that the late skeptic Philip Klass, who had also gone through this CAUSE material closely, had identified that the author of this 1978 memo was in all likelihood Tom Dooley of the Mutual UFO Network and a former NSA man. My research would corroborate that, and I confidently think that Mr. Klass was correct. It seems from reading the memo that NSA did supply me when I requested it, citing the CAUSE work and asking for this memo to be reviewed for further declassification and released, which NSA did. When they supplied me that memo almost in full, we could tell that its author, probably Thomas Dooley, was making his supervisors aware of his activity in the UFO community and that he would be at this conference. The theme of it seemed to be in case any of this comes up later type of thing. Yet, stuff did happen at the conference that Dooley included in the memo that is quite interesting to me. He wrote about how Leo Stringfield and Todd Zekel were there and that they were presenting on alleged crashed UFOs. And Dooley brings up that some of these documents may have well been fraudulent, that were being passed around the conference, that were attributed to intelligence agencies, which kind of goes hand in hand with some of the Benowitz and Simone Mendez cases that you can learn more about by searching the Expanding Frontiers Research blog. I won't go into a whole lot of that right now, but I just found that there were aspects of this memo that were interesting, including also that Dooley had informed his supervisors that Zekel seemed to be trying to pressure him for information that Dooley would know from being an NSA assignee, from being an NSA man. And that Dooley was informing his supervisors that he was putting him off and that he didn't have anything to tell him, but was just letting his supervisors know in the event that Zekel might go public in the future and claim that Dooley was an inside guy for him or something to this effect. Another point of interest to me was that while Dooley wrote in his memo that he had suspicions about people at the UFO conference, particularly concerning the origins of their memos and evidence about supposed UFO crashes, and he specifically mentioned Zekel as being in question. Dooley also wrote that he thought that there was still the potential of a productive working relationship with Zekel. So it's not clear exactly what that meant. I thought that this memo showed a lot of the cloak and dagger dysfunction that's going on around UFO conferences and the saucer genre in general. I also thought it was interesting that in 1979, the Washington Post identified Todd Zekel as a former NSA man himself. So there's a lot to be read into this. There are a number of interesting aspects of it, and all of it came about by citing an old FOIA request from way back in the 1980s and asking for one of the documents that were not included in it. I will include links to these documents as well as more information and the types of things I'm citing and talking about in this video in the video description for those of you that I encourage to go have a look and assess it for yourselves. Judith Darlene Hampton was born in 1946 in Roswell, New Mexico. She'd go on to take the name Judy Zebra Knight and claim that in 1977, an entity named Ramtha first appeared to her in her kitchen. She purports to channel Ramtha, who she says is a warrior from tens of thousands of years ago and battled against the occupants of the mythical Atlantis. J.Z. Knight wrote a book. She became a talk show figure in the 1980s television circuit, and she opened Ramtha School of Enlightenment on an 80-acre estate near Yelm, Washington. Erica Luke suggested to me that this might be an interesting FOIA request to pursue. My go-to agency is the FBI. I mean, you might as well ask a Bureau of Investigation if you want to know about something, right? And I agreed with Erica that this was potentially interesting, so I sent a request over to FBI. They responded with just a couple of pages that included a 1999 interagency memo that indicated that some citizens had approached the FBI, told them that they had considered getting involved with the Ramtha group, but had concerns about how on the level it might be or what their motives might be. This prompted the FBI to reach out to the Thurston County, Washington Sheriff's Office and inquire about the Ramtha group. The Sheriff's Office apparently informed the FBI that they were familiar with the group, as that was contained in the memo that we got from the FBI. We took that memo and decided that perhaps we should send a request to Thurston County Sheriff's Office. We made them aware of the memo and let them know that's why we believe they might have records on Ramtha School of Enlightenment. And what unfolded after that was beyond what we could have foreseen. This became some 18 months of record releases that turned into thousands of pages of records responsive to Ramtha School of Enlightenment from the Thurston County Sheriff's Office. There are police reports, there are digital images, there are digital video clips, there are audio clips, there are a lot of meaningful stories in these records about events surrounding J.Z. Knight, Ramtha, and their following. I won't go into a lot of that material right now because for the purpose of this video, the point to be emphasized is that because we got a relatively small response from the FBI that referenced another law enforcement agency, that led us to send a request under the Washington Public Records Act to the sheriff's office. So you can go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org, learn much more about Ramtha, access the records that we've received, see what's in them, make your own assessments, read our analysis of some of the records, and view some of our videos, Erica Lukes and me, in which we talk about the records we've received and our analysis of them. But the point I really want to make is you can up your FOIA game and you can get responsive records by staying alert for reference points like that. If you can look through other people's FOIA records, you can go to the FBI reading room, the CIA online reading room, and you can look at their records and see things that are referenced in those records, and then cite that PDF, that FOIA response for the reason for your new FOIA request. And as we covered in the previous parts of this video, you can go back through FOIA logs from years past, and you can send a new request to the agency and simply say, cite the FOIA request, the number, the subject, and say, I'd just like what was responded to this request. I would like the material that was sent in response to this request. It's then already obviously been processed and done, so just find those completed requests, and that's another avenue you can take. And then in yet another response we talked about during this video, you can find material that was withheld possibly from years ago as you're reading through requests, as you're reading through responses that other researchers have received, and you can submit that with a request for a mandatory declassification review and say, I would like more of this material, or I would like this material that was withheld reviewed again for further declassification. If you have questions about this, please feel free to reach out. We'd like to help with it, or at least refer you to someone that maybe can help you with your research questions. Expanding Frontiers Research is a nonprofit organization. We hope to see you at our Patreon. We'd love to earn your financial support. So if you find this entertaining and useful and helpful, please join our supporters. And reach out to us and let us know what your interests are. What do you think would make a good FOIA request? And visit us at expandingfrontiersresearch.org. And thank you for watching the video.